Well, USC had college football playoff hopes in 2023 as it returned Heisman winner Caleb Williams and one of the best offensive minds in the country in Lincoln Riley. However, the defense letting up almost 35 points a game is ultimately what led to the Trojans' undoing. Now USC has enough talent and coaching acumen to be a fringe contender in the expanded playoff, but with a transition at quarterback and a transition to the Big Ten, how much improvement will that defense make? Let's take a look at last year's results. USC started off strong with 6 straight wins, but once that competition got stiffer, well, they ended the regular season on a 1-5 skid, going 0-4 against ranked competition. So let's bring in our top USC expert. That is Ryan Abraham of USCFootball.com. Ryan, obviously the big storyline here is USC moving from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. Lincoln Riley taking an interesting approach at Big Ten Media Days, kind of playing the underdog role. What do you think about that, and what actually is the biggest hurdle for the Trojans this year?
Yeah, I think he's trying to, embrace being the underdog going into it when you have big dogs like Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan already in that conference. But I feel like he knew going into it that it's going to be a stylistic change as far as USC football goes, going from the Pac-10 to the Big Ten, Pac-12 to the Big Ten, and adding about 1,400 pounds of muscle over the offseason for his team. They really are trying to bulk up and just be a bigger, stronger team heading into Big Ten play. And I think that's what's going to take. You've seen other teams make the transitions like Nebraska and Maryland and even Penn State back in the day. And it's a different kind of brand of football. And I think it's something that USC is going to have to embrace and try to be tougher and a more physical team. That's what they've been trying to work on throughout this offseason, getting ready for Big Ten play.
Some might say the defensive product kind of wasted the Caleb Williams year. They're going through a makeover this offseason, bringing in D'Anton Lynn from UCLA. What can we expect from the defense this year?
Yeah, I think if you put the 2022 season with Caleb Williams in year 2, maybe it'd feel different. But yes, there were so many expectations last year, like you'd mentioned in the opening, and it was sort of wasted because you were giving up so many points on the defensive side of the ball. What they saw from D'Anton Lynn is someone coming in from the NFL, from the Baltimore Ravens. And a lot of times it's hard to make a transition as like a coordinator from the NFL to college, but he did a really nice job. You have limited time with the players. He came up with a system that was easy to digest and didn't look all that simple for opposing offenses. It looked more complicated, but it was easy for the players to sort of take it in and be able to run and play fast out there and not think as much. That was USC's biggest problem the last couple of years. You would see the middle linebacker like looking at his wristband as the play was snapping, and there was a lot of confusion for this USC defense the last couple of years. So they're hoping the way he turned things around at UCLA, he's going to be able to do the same thing at USC. They upgraded the talent, especially in the back seven, where they got a lot deeper at linebacker and in the secondary. So they're hoping that with those additions in the back seven and also the schematic advantage they think they're going to have with D'Anton Lynn, they can get a lot better on defense.
Miller Moss coming off a stellar first start in the Holiday Bowl, 372 passing yards, 6 passing touchdowns. But the shoes could not be bigger to fill following up the active Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams. What kind of pressure is Miller Moss facing?
I think there's a lot of pressure on him, but, he's someone that embraces it. He's, one of those kids that grew up in Southern California and always wanted to be a Trojan, and even in his backup role had won over the locker room. There's just a lot of teammates that are just have his back. And even Caleb Williams last year, if you watched when he sat out the Holiday Bowl, no one was celebrating more for Miller Moss's 6 touchdown pass than Caleb Williams. So I think he's really won over the team. He was representing USC at Big Ten Media Day, and he showed that he can do it against a pretty good Louisville defense in that Holiday Bowl. And it's different. Bowl games, we can discount them. What's going to happen during this regular season, which is, the schedule's very difficult. There's a lot of good defense he's going to be playing. So can he keep that going, the momentum he built up in the Holiday Bowl through his first year as the regular starter? I think there's a lot of confidence in the locker room with the coaching staff that he can do it. But you're right, there is a lot of pressure on him to kind of bring that level up because every one of Lincoln Riley's quarterbacks have done well. He wants to kind of continue that tradition.
USC entering this season with a top 20 transfer portal class and a top 20 recruiting class. Who are some new faces you think could make an impact?
I think we're mostly looking on the transfer side as far as impact stuff goes. Probably one guy on offense, Woody Marks, coming in from Mississippi State. He compares himself to a Reggie Bush guy. Great personality. He's never really been west of the Mississippi, so having him out here, it's been a big adjustment for him. But I think he's become a great leader on the offensive side, and he'll be their number one back for sure. But they're going to need the most help on defense. So I think Kamari Ramsey coming over from UCLA, he represented USC at Big Ten Media Day as well, even though he was wearing Bruin colors last year. But knowing D'Anton Lynn's system, I think it makes a big difference because they're going to need some of the players to understand what Lynn wants you to do. And I think Kamari Ramsey can be a leader there. But Easton Mascarenas-Arnold was a stud tackler at the linebacker spot for Oregon State last year. He comes over. He's going to be one of those guys, the main guy wearing the in-helmet communication for D'Anton Lynn, so they'll be able to talk on the sidelines. And D'Anton Lynn has used that before in the NFL, so it shouldn't be too big of an adjustment there. And then Greedy Vance is a cornerback from Florida State they brought in. I feel like he was a late addition. They're really deep in the secondary, but the fact that you would bring him in that late in the process, you think he's going to come in and be able to make a big impact. So I think some of those are going to be some of the new impact guys, all from the transfer portal, but they need the help there. To get especially to get that defense up to speed.
With the move to the Big Ten comes one of the toughest schedules in the country, and the Trojans can't even start slow because they get LSU week 1. So when you look at this schedule, where are the make and break spots for the Trojans this season?
Yeah, Grace, a lot of brand names on that schedule. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go, LSU at Michigan, Notre Dame in the Coliseum. Those are they could lose those 3 games and win the rest and still make the college football playoff. I'm looking at that early matchup in the Coliseum against Wisconsin. That's, this big Big Ten brand. When they come into the Coliseum, what are they going to look like? How's that team going to perform? Penn State, too. Outside of those big 3, I think that Penn State game is probably going to be the toughest. I mean, they're a team that could have made the playoffs if it was a 12-team playoff for the last several years. So they're one of those teams that just couldn't get over the Michigan-Ohio State hump. Can USC be a thorn on their side like Ohio State and Michigan has been? And then for road games, the Michigan game is the toughest one. Maryland loses a bunch. That's going to be a tough one going all the way to the East Coast. But I'm going to look at the Minnesota game. They made a bowl game last year, even though they went 5-7. PJ Fleck's been there a long time. But I feel like that's going to be one of those road tests where it's maybe not the best offensive team, but they're going to hit you in the mouth. It's going to be, a lot of line play is going to decide that game. How do you do going into Minnesota and win that one? So those are the 3 games I'm going to pick. If they look good in those games and they maybe win 1 or 2 of the really tough ones, they should be in for a good season. But those are the make or break games, I think, for USC, Grace.
Yeah, for the first time in Lincoln Riley's career, his team is not picked to win the conference, so should be an interesting one. Ryan Abraham with the latest from LA. Thanks so much for joining us. For more from Ryan and the rest of his staff, head over to uscfootball.com. They are 6 days into fall camp, and they have all the updates for you on video, on podcast, on the .com. Everything Trojans, head to uscfootball.com.